Hey guys, it's Ruben here from Business Uncut. Today, I want to talk about how business owners that are currently struggling within their business, whether that means low profitability or no profitability, they're just stuck not understanding how to drive or scale their business, or maybe you're stuck in this position where you've dug yourself a bit of a hole and you've got a bit of ATO debt or legacy debt. I want to talk about how business owners can try and get themselves into a position where they are profitable, the cash flow is healthy. And I'm going to take you through the steps that I've worked through with some clients to ultimately get them to this point of success. Now, business is hard. I want to start off with saying that business is super hard. I've run multiple businesses now. I've been involved in businesses and helping other clients. And it's not something where everybody wins. Everything you see on social media where, businesses are doing well, there's it's minimal that are doing really, really well. Less than a few percent that are absolutely crushing it. And so don't get disheartened and think that, what am I doing wrong? Because 80-90% of the businesses are probably in the same position that you are or have been in that same position. So what you do next and what you do now is ultimately going to be the decider on how successful your future business is going to become. Now let's start it back. So let's just say that you're in a business and you've been running it for 6, 12, 2 years, doesn't really matter, but you're feeling that you're in some kind of rut. You're feeling as though that you really created yourself a job. If that, you're not making money or a little amount of money, enough to pay you a wage. You're probably putting money back into the business and you're finding that debt is accumulating. And most of the time this is going to be ATO debt, or it's going to be credit card debt, or whatever it may be. So first and foremost, what we need to identify first is, with the current business structure that you have, is it feasible to continue that same model moving forward? Now, where people get stuck is that they know that they're in a pickle and they continue to drive exactly the same business, and they're hoping for a change. And unfortunately, it just won't work. Driving and using brute force to try and get out of a sticky situation, rarely do I see that work. And they're hoping for some sort of something that will get them out of this situation, a Hail Mary that, hopefully they get this one big client or they're able to sell all their product, and I believe that it requires a big mindset shift to be able to take the step to go, okay, it hasn't worked. That's okay. I've learned my lessons. Now I need to figure out what will. So before you look at going and putting your hands up and saying, I am done and I can't move forward, have a look at a couple of things first. And the first one is probably reviewing with someone, a third party, whether that's a business coach, an accountant, a friend, a business mentor, someone that can double check that what you're conceptualizing in terms of a business model makes sense. Now, obviously, go to a person that has a little bit of, or has a lot of experience in the space, and ask them, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to explain it to you end to end of how I see it in terms of, how do you do your sales? How do you do your marketing? What are the margins? And what do you think is left? And then from there, getting someone else's advice on what they think is going to give you, shed some light around whether someone else thinks it's feasible or not. And so most of the time, revenue is not the problem. Most of the time is not having the right financial structure in terms of your unit economics and your gross profit margins, your overheads, and then finally your cash flow. And so sometimes the business that you are running that's not running well can be fixed by minor adjustments. So for example, I was sitting down with a client, and over the last 12 months, most months they'd make enough just to pay themselves a wage, and not a healthy wage at that, 70K for running a business and taking on all the risk. And I sat down with them and just try to figure out whether they understood their margins and how much it cost them to acquire a customer and how much it cost them to fully deliver that product or service. And it turned out that one, in their market, they were underpriced. Two, they were taking on every job irrespective of what the job was. And three, they didn't have a good grasp around margins, which didn't allow them to have confidence in scaling the business. And so quickly what we did was implement three very, very simple ideas. One, we identified that there were a flurry of leads coming in, more than enough, right? Through basically organic and Google ads. And so we knew that there was lead flow in there, but what was happening is, we were closing a lot of them because we were pricing so low. So we tested over the next couple of months, improving price structure. So I did a little matrix of what they're pricing at the moment, what is so far that someone would just definitely say no, and what is that middle point where people see value and they accept it as, okay, well, he must deliver something really well. And so he had an exceptional service. And so we had no issues with actual delivery. What we had issues was actually delivering and letting the clients know what the value was. And so that's what we worked on. And so it wasn't a small change. We aggressively increased the rate, and we started doing value pricing rather than hourly pricing, which meant that the clients received a package for the job, and we knew the margin in that already, which was much higher than before. And then what we focused on after that is, the associated costs to getting the job done and whether it was viable, and we had a healthy gross profit margin. Within the space of 3 months, we were able to increase that gross profit margin by a hell of a lot, enough to take their business from making a profit of, let's call it 0 to 5K, to $30,000 to $40,000 a month. And this is within 3 months, a simple change based on unit economics. Now this person had been running this business for 2 years, exactly the same, no changes, because they didn't have clarity, they didn't have confidence. And so that's why I always mention to business owners is don't give up. It's probably not the business model that you're running. It could be, but 9 times out of 10, I truly believe that any business model, irrespective of what it's in, can be made into a successful business. Some are easier than others, don't get me wrong, but most businesses, well, no, all businesses, they have a formula that can be followed. And if you crack that formula and do it well, you can scale it and ultimately have a profitable business. I think, and I back myself, that I think that I could go into most businesses, figure out what's wrong with the unit economics, figure out the supply and demand and cost per acquisition and all those sort of aspects and how we get customers in and sell. And I think I can get it to at least a profitable stage and it's not a job. And so this is what I would encourage most business owners to do who are struggling at the minute, right? And so we did that. They've gotten to a stage, and then we were able to create a 12-month cash flow projection alongside, how much they need to save each month for tax and GST. So they were never in this situation where they were always behind. And that's the worst feeling to have, is that you're working so hard, but you're always behind. You're working so hard, you get to the quarter, you don't have enough money for the BAS. You're working so hard, you get to the end of the year, you make a profit, and then you got to pay tax. And the way I like to do it and recommend it is you keep going and going and going, but you understand on a monthly basis, I need to put away this much for tax, I need to put this way much for GST and all my wages, I need to put this way much for superannuation. However, even after doing that, I still have X amount of cash flow which I can use to either build the business or take out for myself. And so that, with planning with an advisor, with someone like ourselves as accountants and business coaches, we can actually help you get to that point of understanding. Ultimately, it comes down to you and how hard you implement and how fast you implement, but without accountability, at least you know. You can't say that I don't understand the figures enough to make a change. The second part that I wanted to dive into is, if you're a business owner and let's just say over the last couple of years and you're a small business, you've come into a bit of debt in terms of the ATO or other debts in there. A lot of the time over the last few years, business owners I've come across have fallen to this position where life was hard, business is hard, and it was even harder because of COVID. They had to shut down their stores, they had to readjust the way their business, they may have had to inject more capital to keep it alive, and I understand that. But the good thing is there are methods of controlling and strategizing around the debt that you have, particularly ATO debt. And so before you put your hand up again and give up, look down the path of working with someone that understands this, whether it's someone like ourselves or accountants, and have the right people around us to give you advice, and having a look at a restructure that makes sense. And so we've had businesses come to us where we were able to assist them with some specialists to negotiate down serious amount of ATO debt. Obviously, there are certain items that need to be ticked off, but serious amount of ATO debt that was able to be negotiated down to, let's call it, 30 cents on the dollar, 25 cents on the dollar, alleviating a lot of that cash flow strain because they had this legacy ATO debt. And if you can't do that and you don't pass those, then there are other options. You may be able to restructure through liquidation, you may be able to restructure or obtain cash flow loans. There are ways out of it. So that's the second stage, because first and foremost, we need to figure out the feasibility of the business in the first instance. And you do that with some type of advisor. Then you figure out the structure of the ATO side. From there, you need to be meticulous about how much effort you put in to understanding the data moving forward, because you don't want to be in the same place as you were before. The idea is to get a very, very clear indication of how much you need externally in your personal life to live, how much you need the business to profit to make it happen after taxes, after all associated loans and costs and repayments to the ATO, whatever it may be. And you need to stick to this, and you need to challenge yourself, and you need to get into this position now that you know you have feasible figures and margins that you can do it. And you definitely can, right? External factors will happen, but you stick to a foundation that now works, that has enough margin and profit in there, and you're keeping cash where it needs to be in the business, so that when a rainy day happens, you're ready. You got that coverage, you got that safety net of that umbrella to go. I've got cash that's ready to go. This can all be done within a 12-month period, I believe. You can get from where you are quickly and strategically to a better, much, much better position financially within 12 months. Some cases, in very minimal cases, there is no way out, and that's very unfortunate. Sometimes we just have to make that decision and cut it off. But before that happens, there are several ways that, several things that could be done to improve. So if you're listening to this and you're a business owner and you're feeling the cash flow strain and profitability strain and just life as a business owner, like, it's hard, man. Like, I have failed with many businesses. They don't always work, but now I'm putting together, every single time that it doesn't work, I put together a plan of why it doesn't, and implement as part of my formula, my perfect business formula of how it should work. And if I follow that formula, then most times, moving forward, it should. And even though I run multiple businesses and I have a support team, I still look for advice. I still engage great lawyers and accountants and people around me and mentors. And so, always be open to taking in criticism. Always be open to taking in advice. As the business owner, I know it can be very hard because the business that you create, it's your baby, and you don't want anyone telling you how to run it. But what I've learned very, very quickly is that a lot of people around you have probably done it better than you, faster than you, more profitably than you. So don't be afraid to take their advice. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's hard to take in and accept, but the sooner you can do that and get over that mindset, unfortunately, the quicker you can get out of this hole. And so, this podcast is about me encouraging you as a business owner to, one, don't give up, believe in the process, implement the process, and keep yourself accountable. Find the right people, and then find that time and energy to execute. It can be done. I've done it with a few clients already over the past 6 months. We've basically turned around their business in a very, very short amount of time, and not much had to be done at all. So if you need help, we're always here. They're my top tips for people that are struggling in their business at the minute. Give us a buzz, or if you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to shoot us a message.